It's time for the Big 12 to have the respect of three teams, not just in the college football playoff conversation, but defensively. Utah, BYU, Texas Tech, they all should be in. Here's why. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day, all the way from ESPN and TNT and Inside the 12. And he's from the Pete Souza Show. It is Pete Souza. Nobody watches Big 12 football and basketball more than me. Pete's second. Pete's like a really close second. He's right up there. He will join to talk all things Texas Tech, BYU, and Utah getting into the playoff. But then Cincinnati, Arizona State, Houston, what is in it for you? Why keep playing the games? What is there to look forward to for the teams that are still outside looking in, don't control their own destiny? And finally, in June, BYU lost its senior quarterback to scandal. And now their freshman quarterback has them in the top 10, and he's in the conversation for the National Freshman of the Year. How did this happen? And are they not getting enough love nationally? If you hit subscribe, I get to keep my job. Pete, look, man, you're calling these games. You're watching these games. You're waxing poetic in studio every week about the Big 12. Yeah. We both have the love, the affinity for the conference. I want to start here. It feels like this year on November 18th compared to last year, November 18th, we have legitimate college football playoff caliber teams. This season, to me, feels different for the Big 12 conference.
Well, it absolutely does. And I think it starts and ends with Texas Tech. Yep. And, well, I shouldn't say ends, but it starts with Texas Tech. And it also starts with an evening out of the conference. And this is no shade at like a team like Baylor or a school like Baylor, but obviously they're down this year, right? We could do a whole nother show about that. But it's behooved the Big 12 in a sense where if you're going to have great teams, you got to have bad teams. And you look no further than what Utah did to Baylor and what Texas Tech did to UCF. It only enhances, and really, I hate to say it, but TCU, right, kind of got smacked around by BYU. That, not necessarily, I don't want to put TCU in that category, but you understand what I'm saying. Like, this is a moment now where the Big 12 is able to basically emphasize that these three teams are more than capable and more than deserving of being in the college football playoff. And the way that they ran roughshod over their opponents this past weekend, while we saw Ole Miss kind of squeaking by Florida, the final score was a little different, but that was a really close game. You see Oklahoma, Alabama, right? What was it? Georgia, Texas. Like, those were all kind of close games till the end. Yeah. And obviously, I'm not going to sit here and say the Big 12 is going toe-to-toe with the SEC today. But I will say it is like having a serious moment here. And I would tell people to get used to it because the leadership in the Big 12 and the landscape of college sports right now is fit for that. But it was huge. I really believe having a conference that's not so kind of middling, right, and everybody's beating up on each other has really, really helped this team or this conference. And also, again, Texas Tech is just lights out. They're prolific. They're that good. Yeah,
we'll certainly talk teams specifically, Texas Tech being at the forefront of that. But if you look at where the College Football Playoff Committee sat last week with Texas above BYU and Utah, the expectation for me is for the Longhorns to fall, BYU to find themselves in that 11 spot, still behind, obviously, Oklahoma. I think Alabama will ultimately be above BYU and Utah this week. But look, Pete, I think we are a loss from Oregon, a loss from Notre Dame, a loss from Alabama away from the Big 12 genuinely having a case for three teams to maybe not get in, but at least deserve to be in the conversation or deserve to be in at the end of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Big 12 maybe missed an opportunity. Or you can look at it a different way. Notre Dame just took care of business against Pitt because I think Notre Dame finishes up with Stanford and some other Syracuse. Like, Notre Dame probably will not lose again. Yep. And that's because, and partially, I actually made a mental note. Like, let me even look at their schedule. Their schedule sucks. But that's a whole other story. Like, you live life as an independent and you're Notre Dame, right? Yeah. Underneath touchdown Jesus. It's a whole nother program. BYU was having the success and still independent. Nobody would give a rat's ass. That's just how it is. But yeah, I really do think that you will see some more chaos, as you mentioned, as we're coming down the stretch now. I mean, there's a lot of teams, or some teams on that graph you just showed, with only one game remaining, Texas Tech included. Just one more against West Virginia, which is good news because there's less room for error. But I do think some of those teams playing in those bigger conferences could go down, creating space for a Utah and a BYU to definitely get in, outside of BYU having to beat Texas Tech in the championship, to both of them to get in.
Yeah, I think you're going to need the Oregon loss to USC. You'll need an Alabama loss somewhere in here in the last couple of weeks. If they lose to Auburn, they then fall out of the conversation. Notre Dame likely beats Stanford. And for some reason, we have deduced that Notre Dame only beating one top 25 team, USC, that gives them the right to be above a BYU, a one-loss BYU, or it gives them the right to be significantly above a Utah, whose 2 losses are to both top 10 teams on the road. Texas Tech, though, is the school in the Big 12 that controls its own destiny. And to me, it's because of domination. I'm completely puzzled. I know Baron Morton was out, but the Texas Tech defense should have been far too good for Arizona State to win that game. I'm surprised they're not undefeated, but they are routing teams. They made UCF look foolish last week. This Tech team, in my mind, is as good of a defensive team, as close to a national championship contender as this conference has had in 15 years, not named Oklahoma.
Well, yeah, let me tell you why Texas Tech is so special, too, because they cover so many areas now in this changing landscape. You have a charismatic old school coach who you could compare to like Barry Switzer, but you've got this football staff who did the most amazing job of traversing all of college football last offseason leading up to this year, finding the best quote unquote free agents, but also like vetting them out, And of course you have the finances from Cody Campbell and the big guns in West Texas that enabled you really to just be on par with some of the other perennial powers, or some of the powers, I should say. I'm not calling Texas Tech a perennial power, but some of the powers in college football. So they're covering all their bases. Like the Joey Maguire thing, like that type of football coach is really kind of going by the wayside as we continue down this path where it's contracts, it's X's and O's, it's free agents coming in. It's how do we evaluate talent so much. So there's a real special lightning in a bottle type quality to this Texas Tech run. And to what you pointed out, the sheer domination of it. Yeah. It reminds me of a Miami when I was growing up, Florida State, we're just beating the brakes off these opponents in conference. They were a 24.5 point favorite. Obviously they came through, but for that game against UCF in conference, that's impressive, dude. And there was another game, I think it was, unfortunately, Oklahoma State. They were favored by 30, but Oklahoma State, they're sort of a group of 5 right now.
That would make sense a little bit more than the UCF one, who was playing fairly well. They blew out West Virginia. Yeah. UCF has a couple of games that have made me confident in the future under Rich Rodriguez at the very least. Now, an area that has become a point of contention. There are AP poll voters, there are Big 12 fans who would say if BYU and Utah were to recreate their game in the aggregate, that 5 times out of 10 Utah wins, 5 times out of 10 BYU wins, and a neutral site, it's 50-50 certainly. Is there any way to separate? If you're Pete Souza, can you say, you know what, I think today Utah is better than BYU, or today BYU is better than Utah? Because we know the committee likes to look at this and say, okay, but who are you today, not who you were in September or October?
I can't get past, I have to go back to the head-to-head meeting. Yep. These two teams played one another. BYU won. End of story. Let's not overthink it. Let's move on. I think that's the only that's the justice we can pay to both schools. You had the opportunity to play BYU, Utah. Now Utah is surging right now. Yep. And again, I did believe this, and I think you were on board with me. I did think last year was a total outlier. I mean, it was a nightmare with their health under center for Utah. There were injuries all over the board. Kyle Whittingham is reminding us as to why they were atop the Pac-12 year after year after year after year. And they were looked at as one of the best programs in college football. And even if Utah does not make the college football playoff this year, if you are a Big 12 fan, or you're a fan of your team that's in the Big 12, I should say, to make it a little simpler, you should love this, because Utah is elevating the status of your conference. More so, I mean, last year, again, the Big 12 was looked at collectively like, I don't know. And now it's really come together. I mean, last year, the Big 12's biggest feather in the cap was a Colorado team during the season, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of, I don't want to say a paper tiger, but that was a one and done deal. We could kind of see that, and now we're being provided more evidence to that. This year, I'm looking at programs that I don't think they're going anywhere. I think they'll just continue to ascend. It's not like a perennial quarterback is going to leave one of these schools and then such school is going to have to reinvent the wheel. We just saw it at BYU. Jake Retzlaff was a superstar heading into this season till things took a turn, and then there was Bear Brockmeyer.
No doubt. This is a matchup that I think if you play Bird Ficklin, as good as he is, we're going to see Bird Ficklin, Bear Bachmeyer next year. It's going to rock the next few seasons.
It's going to be awesome, yeah.
These installments are great. I think both teams have proven defensively they probably deserve to go, or at least, again, a shot at a national championship. That said, Cincinnati, Arizona State, Houston, I think there are good teams in the Big 12 that have fallen into that second-tier category that will not have a shot at the college football playoff unless they win the league. So if you're a Cincy fan, yeah, it's gravy that you're winning right now, but what do you have to show for it if all you get is the Holiday Bowl? Let's go there next. This is Locked On Big 12. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is exactly where I go when you tell me that this week the Utah Utes are only 16.5-point favorites against Kansas State in a spot where you know that Kyle Whittingham and company want to win by as many points as possible because that only bolsters their spot in the college football playoff. Kansas State just struggled so mightily against Oklahoma State. I'm going to go in and hammer Utah. And with the NBA and the NFL being back, there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. It keeps the game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. He is Pete Souza of The Pete Souza Show and so many other things, and he's on Locked On Big 12 today. Pete, I'm going through here, and I think Cincinnati's a good football team. I really do think that Houston is a good football team, a great defense. I think that Arizona State is so solid, and Jeff Sims has stepped up. For these teams, though, that are now either out of the conversation for the Big 12 title or they're watching BYU and Texas Tech control their own destiny, in this era of college football where everybody's opting out of bowl games and bowl games don't even really matter that much, what is there left to play for if you're one of these schools?
Well, I think you play for, again, and it's a great question. And I don't know that, the system probably is broken and needs fixing, but You can't hold it against these teams. And I do believe sometimes individually for some of these players to opt out, I mean, I don't know. Is it right? Is it wrong? They have agents who talk to teams, and maybe sometimes that information is rubbish, but they're getting the information and the urge to sit out from someone who they believe has knowledge about the situation. So that's the system being screwed up. As far as the teams and they're concerned, first of all, I was thinking about this the other day. I was in my car, and of course, don't do this at home, but I was like looking, this is what we do. I was scrolling through Arizona State's season and looking at some of their numbers and their player stats, right? Yeah. And I really was impressed with Kenny Dillingham in Arizona State. I was like, you know what? It's a pretty good year for Kenny in a sense where you lose Cam Scatterboo, your star quarterback goes down. There are some other injuries and questions. And hey, you're playing in a real good conference where they didn't do one of those numbers where the program just plummeted right back down to like Herm Edwards territory. Yeah. Like this was a year where you could consider maybe down, but I think they still got 7 or 8 wins. Forgive me on that number, but you get the idea. With Houston, this is a total accomplishment. And it's something you can hang your hat on. This is Willie Fritz, second year. He's kicking ass again. We didn't see this coming, but actually we did. Yeah. And I think for a program like Houston, Willie Fritz did this at Tulane. And I'll be quick with this because I know we're on time. But he did a great job of taking star players from New Orleans who went all over the country to play somewhere else and welcoming them back to New Orleans after maybe a player goes to USC or goes to Ole Miss and it doesn't work out, or doesn't have a great experience. You've got a hotbed of talent in New Orleans. You've got the same thing in Houston, and you have to leave that light on for the rest of the country and possible transfers who want to come back home and play at Houston because they're not having the best experience at Alabama because they're not going to touch the field, or maybe they don't like their position coach. Willie Fritz has done an amazing job, and he can't stop now because winning a bowl game is important as far as your face is out there, your team is out there, you're playing till later in the season. It's more like an advertisement or a marketing situation than anything else. For Cincinnati, now I've gone team by team. You didn't ask me to do that. But they've lost 2 straight. I think that it's important for that program and that school just to try to finish on an uptick. But I don't know, like, if players give a crap. You know what I mean? Like, I really don't know. I don't think they do, probably. I mean, the overwhelming majority probably does not care about the Holiday Bowl.
So if we can make this conversation a bit about how college football and the Big 12 specifically are covered, and you're a mouthpiece for the conference in the best way possible. You're an objective guy who respects the Big 12 and obviously thinks they deserve as much respect as you can give to a conference in a year like this. What makes me ask this question? Last year, BYU starts undefeated. They're on a tear. They're top 10 in the country. They slip to Kansas. Then they lose to Arizona State. And you would never know this year that BYU was a 10-win team, 11-win team last season. We erased it from history. We're like, good year for BYU. So in a season where last year it was all gravy for the Cougars, they didn't get any added bonus going into this year. It was just, look, the cute story's back again. And for Cincinnati or Arizona or a team like Houston that was supposed to possibly miss a bowl game this year, if you win 9 games, but then next year there's still you don't get anything. There's just the Holiday Bowl trophy. It feels like the system is so broken that winning 9 games just doesn't do anything aside from retain your coach for a couple more years, right? The Neil Brown scenario at West Virginia in 2023, they won games, but then it was like, okay, what did we get for going 8-4? A bowl berth to play an extra game and then we go home. It just doesn't feel like anything past the 12-team college football playoff has that much, or the Pop-Tart Bowl has that much importance.
I'll do one more for you. Let's think about Cincinnati. I mean, I'm engaged now, right? I've been with my fiance for 2 years. But I can say, as a single guy, I'm one relationship removed from Cincinnati being in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that long ago. And it's not like they got a huge gust of wind or shot in the arm from even that happening.
Yeah.
I really believe it is a turn the page, start fresh type of society we're in, except for a couple of really high-level teams, right? Because it is all about, I don't want to say, and I'm not like crapping on the sport. College football is amazing, and there's still amazing camaraderie and teamwork and relationships that'll last forever. But it is transactional in a sense that I don't think anybody knows what side's up. Once the regular season starts, then we can start assessing these teams that have come together. That's why I think Texas Tech is so awesome this year, because I did believe that there was going to be points in time where maybe the Sam linebacker wasn't quite sure, what the rush end was going to do, and they bang into each other, or the right tackle and the right guard bang into each other, pulling on a trap player, so something like that. And we haven't seen a lot of that. They have been cohesive from Jump Street, which is a nod to their coaching staff. But I don't know, to answer your question, I really don't know. I've done a good job.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not quite sure what you get out of it. I think I did hear a couple times this offseason, and now I'm reaching, that BYU beat Colorado in the bowl game, and Colorado played everyone. They were healthy. I imagine that gave BYU a little bit of mojo, maybe recruiting wise, but no, I mean, they began the season, in the toilet again, as far as rankings were concerned. And look, they played their way out of it, but you're right. It would have helped a little bit if they began the season ranked 25th in the country. Right.
Yeah. I mean, or you just start them where they finished off last year. We have this it's almost this relegation of next year you get to be right where you were to end the year. And until I started my Locked On Big 12 power rankings right where they ended. Why? Because no one's played a game yet. Well, they're way worse this year. They haven't played a game yet. They're way better. We tend to put
that's so much really good. I mean, you think outside the box, and that's one of the reasons you're such a powerhouse. But that is interesting. Why the hell not? Because you have no clue who you're getting this year, right? So might as well go off last year.
Right. That's where I'd like to start, at least. We can mix it all up.
The teachers are the same. And by the way, I think you were probably on this too. I always like Kalani Sitake, and there's something about that program in general that is really working there that facilitates success for their student athletes. There's something special happening there. So I'm not saying it's a turnkey deal. You can throw anybody on the field and the head coach and the program. I'm not saying that. But, man, they do a hell of a job. They do a hell of a job. Somehow, some way, here's BYU once again in mid-November kicking everybody's rear end.
Yep. That's a perfect segue into BYU. The story that America doesn't talk about enough to me. The Cougars are in a position to go to the college football playoff. I think they deserve a spot. But how did they get there when a few months ago they didn't have a quarterback? This is Locked On Big 12. Pete Souza, ESPN, TNT, Big 12, all of it. Man, the BYU Cougars, it's like death, taxes, and Kalani Sitake's BYU Cougars at this point. Preseason, we're talking about a team that in June didn't have a quarterback, and the quarterback they were bringing in had not played spring ball. True freshman, 6'7", 300-pound, just monster beast creature that you created in the lab. And now, man, from a freshman quarterback, he's leading one of the most efficient offenses in the country under Aaron Roderick, and they have won every game in front of them, not played on the road against a top 10 team. This is. It doesn't make any sense to me how they just keep winning, even when America in June counted them completely out.
Well, look, I think the Bear Bachmeier story is amazing because, first of all, nobody saw it coming. I was excited. I was hoping he was going to win the job in camp just because he was the the sexiest recruit. And the story I knew was already pretty awesome, right? True freshman, right? Decommitted from Stanford, is going to BYU. His brother's there. You know, I do believe it's in the family and that stuff helps. You know, his brother Hank, being on a huge stage early on, you just kind of see that, you can connect to it. You're not shocked by it, right? I also believe that one of the things that detracts from this story is the delicacy with which the media has to approach it to tell it. Okay. And it's BYU. The whole thing that happened in the offseason with Jake Retzlaff, I don't want to talk about that on my show. Yeah. And in order to talk about Bear, you got to talk about that. And I don't want to talk about that. And so it kind of takes a little bit away from kind of the magic of the story, because truth be told, something ridiculously crazy happened with a player on your team, and he got jettisoned from the program, and this young man had to come out of nowhere. And apparently and I've been around him, I've never actually talked to him. Apparently he's got super smart, right? Bear Bachmeier is. He's like a step ahead of everybody mentally. And I do believe that it's the type of athlete that ends up going to a BYU that knows how to put team first and ego aside, and really makes for a story like this to become more possible. And forget the fact he's just dominating on the field. Right, he's a dual threat guy. He'll run you over. He'll throw the ball over your head, but he's playing like he's been there before. And I think it's so encouraging that it was a disappointing outcome for BYU in Lubbock, and they bounce right back and take care of business at home against TCU.
Yeah, looked their best against TCU. The fans of BYU were saying, look, we just lost 2 or 3 wins. When your starting quarterback, senior starting quarterback, goes out the window. Yeah. And in comes this kid who in January of 2025, no BYU fan had ever heard of, that no college football fan had ever heard of. And now he's putting up incredible numbers running the football, throwing the football. And you're right, the story starts with a player who is accused of sexual assault. Yeah. And the daunting, just the heavy weight of that, only to find out a week later, hey, allegedly she admits that this wasn't really a thing, and now the onus is off of Retzlaff. He admits that it was consensual, but because it was consensual, it gets a 7-game suspension. The web of this, the intricacy because of what BYU is as an institution and an honor code, I think both of us agree that there's value in that. There's value in the rigor. There's value in it's like when you go to Navy or Army, the expectation is different. You're creating quality human beings. And you say, look, I don't care if you're the starting quarterback. You're going to have to reckon with the honor code. And from there, Pete, would you ever see an SEC school in this scenario look at their senior starting quarterback and say, you know what, we're so committed to our values, you walk out the door, we're going to go with the 18-year-old kid who missed spring ball? Would you ever see that?
No, you would never, ever, ever in your life see that. And I think that's why, kind of deep down inside, I low-key pull for BYU. I would love to see them pull off something special here.
Yeah.
While they stick to the standard, right, that is there, that Lavelle Edwards coached under, right, that Steve Young played under. Mm-hmm. And even if you don't really want to get with the program like a Jim McMahon, who, we saw his color for personality later in life. We're not talking about perfect people. Right. We're talking about, everybody getting in line and following a certain way of life, which really only can make you better. I'll say one last thing about the Retzlaff story. This is almost a little inside baseball since we're talking about it. But I know for me, and I would imagine for you, because you did a really nice job of covering it. I don't even know if nice is the word, but you were accurate. Sure. You stayed on top of it. That's like microwave clicks. Like as far as traction, like even by just doing my job talking about that situation, I saw my numbers go through the roof on my show, the Pete Souza Show. Sure. But I didn't want to keep doing that every day. Like, I'm not some kind of smut peddler. It's not good. It's not a good story. It's not a fun story to cover. And, I want to talk about celebrating college football and celebrating Bear Bachmeier. But it is tough to celebrate Bear without kind of reaching back into that. At least for me it is. And maybe I'm just shaking it off. But that's why I'm answering a specific question here. That is why Bear Bachmeier may not be getting as much love as he maybe should be, or should be, for sure should be. Yeah. And also I think it's BYU, they don't get the respect they deserve. They should get more respect, period.
Johnny Manziel, Jameis Winston, Tim Tebow, like really good freshman campaigns that were not in the face of controversy. They didn't have to step in for the guy who had like this witch hunt claim fall through the honor code system. It's just so
you're juggling with chainsaws when you start.
It's brutal, and Bear Bachmeier does, and we beat the dead horse there. Wish that it was covered more from the national media. I think it should be. Can I show you a clip that I still have loaded in here?
Please.
This is the third and 11 where Bear Bachmeier runs a touchdown against Utah, carries the guy into the end zone. This is the view. Credit to the BYU social team. This is the view from the field. This is actually Fox's social team. Listen to the crowd. The three as he's running.
Dude. I'm showing you. You can't see it through my hairy arm. That's what goosebumps look like.
I mean, that's why we watch college football. Yeah. That's why we do college football, is that. And I think the rest of the country is over. They're missing it. We get so hung up on, but can Alabama work its way back into the SEC championship, that we miss the reasons we actually love the sport.
Yeah. No, and I agree. And I will say this. It's such a great point you make. And I think if BYU continues to win and has success, that story we just talked about, that you and I have told over and over again, and maybe have a little fatigue connected to, that will be talked about, before the college football playoff game that BYU, they'll rehash it, but it's more like a one and done story. It's not like a rewatchable per se. But that moment right there, that culmination that you just showed, gave me goosebumps, and it was like, that is raw college football. One more thing I'll tell you about this situation that is it just came to mind. Imagine if Retzlaff was like, you know what? I love BYU. I still believe this is my best opportunity. I'm going to take it on the chin, serve a 6-7 game suspension, and then come back. 6, 7, yeah.
Nice, you did it. You did it to yourself.
You did it. But yeah, I wonder what a controversy we would have brewing for ourselves, right? If right now that was the situation we were looking at.
I can't even. I figured that a few weeks ago. Of like, this would be the week where he comes back.
Yeah.
You can't. The kid's just so good. Middle of the field. Chase Roberts found him. Middle of the field. Parker Kingston found him deep. Chase Roberts. He just
And the one thing about their loss to Texas Tech, that, you mentioned Parker Kingston, so it triggered a memory. He muffs a punt. That guy's never going to do that again in his life.
Oh.
And so they had 3 turnovers that, they coughed up, and Texas Tech didn't turn it over once. They took full advantage. If those teams meet again and BYU can take care of the football, we are going to have one hell of a football game.
I think so. People like to talk about how it was a few plays away from 46-10 or 46-7 Texas. It was a few plays away from 21-17. And
3 turnovers to none. You're going to lose every time.
Absolutely, especially against that Tech defense. Yeah. Pete, this is the longest show in Locked On Big 12 history, but I can't. Every time I get you on.
Hey, by the way, watch Landman. There's a Big 12 mention in Season 2, Episode 1. I saw that. I sent it to Drake. I was like, the Big 12 is having a real moment. Yeah,
they're just naming mascots for fun.
Literally, they should have a scene in Landman where somebody's watching Drake Toll and Locked On 12, right, Locked On Big 12 on their phone, and that's in the background over Ali Larder's shoulder. That's what we need.
And to me, showing a Big 12 highlight on ESPN Plus of Pete Souza just touchdown. It's good.
Let's go,
Pete. I know that every listener of Locked On Big 12 has seen your stuff, and they probably already follow you and your Big 12 coverage. But if they don't, by the rare chance they don't, where can they find you?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm not hard to find, right? Pete Souza on Instagram, Petey Souza on Twitter, and then the Pete Souza Show. And then, calling games. My next basketball game is Kansas State and Seton Hall at Bramblage. I'm pumped for that. And then, obviously, college football inside the 12. I have a game this weekend, but I'm pumped. But it's an American game. It's UAB and USF. And then Peacock. I got a couple games basketball coming up. I know I have one game in December and 3 or 4 in January, which I'll be at BYU for one of those games. So I'm pumped, man. Yeah.
What's the BYU game?
I forget.
All right, great.
I think it might be UCF, but I forget.
But look, Marriott Center either way is going to be just.
Let's go.
That place is nuts. It's Pete Souza of, I could say ESPN, TNT, NBC at this point. I just don't. All of the letters. You just put a letter together, and Pete probably represents it somewhere in there. This has been, it always will be, Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.